The Tale of the Minister and the Prince. In a kingdom, there lived a king who loved his son more than anything else. One day, the prince asked his father to go to the hunting grounds, and the king agreed. The minister accompanied him with several servants, as he had a plan to kill the prince. When they reached the hunting grounds, a beautiful deer passed by them. The minister said to the prince, "Chase after that deer and hunt it." The prince rode his horse toward the deer. Gradually, he moved farther away from the hunting grounds. The deer escaped and disappeared from the prince's sight. Disappointed by his failure, the prince decided to return to the hunting grounds but lost his way and ended up in a barren desert without water. While he was wandering, he suddenly heard a sound of crying. He followed the sound and found a little girl sitting on the ground, crying. He approached her and asked, "Who are you and why are you crying?" The girl replied, "I am the daughter of the king of Mole. I came hunting on horseback but lost my way. I fell asleep on my horse and landed here in this desert. My horse ran away, leaving me all alone." The prince felt sorry for the girl. He helped her onto his horse and galloped in various directions until they finally reached an island. The girl said to the prince, "Young man, I know this island. Please let me down from your horse so I can find my way." The prince assisted her in getting off the horse. However, as soon as her feet touched the ground, she transformed into a hideous and terrifying monster. The monster roared and shouted, "Hey, my children, come here. I have brought you a delicious meal." The prince realized he had been deceived and was now trapped in a deadly situation. With no way to escape, he looked up to the sky and called out God's name loudly. Upon hearing God's name, the monster roared and released the prince. The prince thanked God, mounted his horse, and quickly rode away from that place. After hours of traveling, he finally found his way back and returned to the palace. He went to his father and described the entire story, explaining how the minister had planned to send him to death. King of Greece listened to the tale and thought deeply. After a while, he turned to the minister and said, "Perhaps you are right. Maybe Sage of Royan is indeed an enemy of my life. He is a powerful man who easily cured my serious illness. Therefore, he could just as easily cause my death." Seeing that his words had influenced the king, the minister said, "I am glad you have finally recognized the danger threatening you. Now you must think about how to get rid of Sage of Royan from your life." The king immediately ordered Sage of Royan to be brought to the palace. Unaware of everything, Sage of Royan arrived at the palace. The king asked him, "Do you know why I summoned you?" The sage thought for a moment and replied, "No, your majesty. How could I know?" The king shouted in anger, "I have summoned you to issue your death sentence." Sage of Royan was astonished and bewildered. "My death sentence? But why? What crime have I committed?" The king responded, "You know better than anyone that you are a spy, plotting my murder. However, before you succeed in your plan, I will kill you." With that, he called for the executioner. The Sage of Royan Eyes was in tears and said, "O great king, is this the reward for my good deeds?" The king of Greece replied, "I will no longer be deceived by you. If I do not kill you, you will kill me." The executioner approached the sage, drew his sword from its sheath, and waited the king's command. Sage of Royan fell to the ground and begged, "Have mercy. Do not kill me. I am innocent." However, the king ignored his pleas and wanted to give the order for his execution. At that moment, one of the king's close advisors stepped forward and said, "O great king, we have not seen any wrongdoing from this man. Please forgive him for our sake." The king of Greece grew angry and shouted, "Did you not see how he treated my illness by giving me a polo stick? Can he not give me a flower to smell so that I may die? I am sure that if I do not kill him, he will kill me." Sage of Royan realized that the king would not change his mind. Therefore, in a last-ditch effort, he made a plan and said to the king, "Very well, I am ready to die. However, I have a request. Allow me to go home to make a will and bring you a valuable book that I possess." The king of Greece asked, "A valuable book? What kind of book is it?" Sage of Royan replied, "It is a strange and magical book with many uses. One of its benefits is that if you open it after my execution and read 3 lines from the left page, my head will speak and answer any questions you have. The king of Greece thought for a moment. Eventually, he agreed to the sage's request. He assigned one of his guards to accompany him home to make his will and bring the book. Sage of Royan went home with the guard, spent the night there, and returned to the palace the next day with an old book in hand. He handed the old book to the king and said, "After my execution, place my cut-off head in front of you. Open the book, read 3 lines from the left page, and ask my head any questions you wish." The king looked at the book and wanted to read the book. However, he found that the pages were stuck together. He wet his finger with spittle and tried to turn the pages. Finally, 5 pages of the book came apart, but there was nothing written on any of them. The king looked at Sage of Royan and said, "These pages are blank." The sage replied, "My king, please turn more pages." The king wet his finger again and turned several more pages. Again, there was nothing written on those pages. The king looked at Sage of Royan in anger and was about to say something when suddenly he felt a severe dizziness. Color drained from his face, his breath caught in his throat, and he screamed before collapsing to the ground. The poison that Sage of Royan had put to the pages of the book had taken effect on the king and killed him. After finishing this tale, the fisherman turned to the genie in the jar and said, "Did you hear this story? Do you understand that if the king of Greece had not decided to execute the Sage of Royan, he would not have been killed? If you did not intend to kill me, you would now be free. I have no choice but to throw you into the sea and save my own life." The genie in the jar said, "O fisherman, have mercy. I have done bad to you. Do not repay evil with evil." The fisherman replied, "I also pleaded with you for mercy. However, your heart was unyielding, and you wanted to kill me. Therefore, I should not be kind to you." The genie cried out in despair and said, "O fisherman, forgive my sins and free me. I promise I will never harm you again and will ensure that you attain endless wealth and high status." The fisherman thought for a moment. Eventually, he decided to believe the genie's words. He opened the jar. Smoke rose into the air, and the genie appeared. He stepped onto solid ground and kicked the jar into the sea. The fisherman was terrified and thought to himself that he had been deceived once again. This time, he would be killed. He then fearfully said to the genie, "You promised that you would not harm me." The genie laughed and said, "Follow me." Trembling with fear, the fishermen began to follow the genie. They walked until they reached a tall mountain. They climbed up the mountain and came down into a big desert. They continued through the desert until they arrived at a pool of water. The genie stood by the pool and told the fishermen, "Cast your net into the pool and catch some fish." The fisherman looked into the pool and saw fish of red, white, yellow, and blue swimming in it. He cast his net into the water and pulled out 4 fish of 4 different colors. The genie said, "Take these fish back to the city as gifts for the king. If I have done bad to you, forgive me and accept my apology. Since I was trapped in the sea for 1,800 years and far from the land, I was bad to you. Come here once a day and catch fish from this pond. God protect you." With that, he left. The fisherman was shocked by this event. He took the fish and returned to the city. He went home and placed the fishes in a container of water, then took the container to the king's palace. When the king saw the fish, which he had never seen fishes like that before, he was very pleased with the gift. He ordered that 400 gold coins be given to the fisherman as a reward. The fishes were given to his minister to give to the palace chef so that he could prepare a meal with them for the king. The chef took the fish and put them in a pan over the fire. As one side of the fish was frying, something strange happened. He noticed that the pan was shining and each fish glowed like a lamp. When the chef saw that, he passed out. After a moment, the chef regained consciousness and saw that the light from the pan had gone and the fish had burned. He cursed his bad luck and sat down sadly in a corner of the kitchen. The minister came to the kitchen to check on the fish. He saw that the fish were burned and the chef was crying. He asked the chef what happened. The chef told the whole story. The minister was amazed and sent someone to find the fisherman. The fisherman came to the palace. The minister told him to bring more fishes of 4 different colors. The fisherman complied. He went to the pond and cast his net into the water, catching fishes of 4 colors in his net. The fisherman took the fish and brought them to the king's palace. The minister received the fish and gave them to the chef. The chef put the fish in the pan and lit the fire underneath it. As one side of the fish was frying, the same strange event occurred again. This time, the minister, who witnessed it himself, fell deep in thought and said, "This is something strange. We should not keep it from the king." He then went to the king and told the story. The king thought for a moment and said, "I will not believe it until I see it with my own eyes." Once again, they called for the fisherman and told him to catch more fishes and bring them to the palace. The fisherman caught the fish and brought them to the palace. The king ordered the minister to have the fish cooked in front of him. The order of the king was accomplished, and they brought the pan. They put the fish in it and lit the fire underneath it. The king watched as the pan shined and the fish sparkled. Seeing this scene, the king thought deeply and said, "There is a secret with these fishes. I must find out what it is." He then ordered for the fisherman to be brought to the palace. When the fisherman arrived, the king asked him where he had caught the fish. The fisherman, trembling with fear, gave him directions to the pond. The king asked him how far it was to the pond. The fisherman replied, "It is half an hour's journey." The king said, "Come with us to guide us." The fisherman, now very frightened, thought to himself, "May God curse the Jenny who did not keep his promise and has put me in big trouble." That very hour, the king, his soldiers, and the minister set off toward the pond. They went on until they reached a mountain. They climbed up and came down of it, stepping into a desert surrounded by 4 tall mountains. They finally reached the pond and saw the fish. The king turned to his minister and soldiers and asked, "Have you ever seen this desert and this pond before?" They all replied, "No, we have never seen it." The king fell into deep thought again and said, "This pond and its strange fish hold a great secret. Until I discover this secret, I will not return to the palace." He then ordered his soldiers to rest and called for his minister. The minister came forward, and the king said to him, "I want to be alone so I can discover the secret of the pond. Tell the commander of the army to keep everyone away from me." The king's command was accomplished, and everyone moved away from him. The king remained alone in the desert. He waited until it became dark. Then he drew his sword from its sheath and began to walk back and forth until he noticed a white color in the distance. He approached it and saw a palace made of white marble. The palace had 2 large iron doors. One was open, and the other was closed. The king walked toward the open door and knocked. There was no response. He knocked harder on the door but still received no answer. The king passed through the entrance and stepped inside the palace. He called out for anyone in the palace. However, he heard no reply. Sad and hopeless, he sat down in a corner and said to himself, "What a pity that there is no one in this palace to ask about the pond and its fish." At that moment, he heard a sad and weeping voice echoing in his ears.